Hi, hello, hi. I'm Leander, and I'm losing it, babes. I'm losing it. I'm losing it today because I really haven't done one of these podcast thingies in a while, and honestly, it felt like I'm the sort of person who reflects when I hear my own voice. I know how narcissistic, I know, but like I often sometimes feel like things aren't real until you say them out loud. Like if things live in your head, they're sort of like, a work of fiction. They're just like, oh, a thought. But like when you say stuff out loud and you hear them and you put them in sentence form, you're like, oh my God, that does sound kind of crazy. I think that's what audio does for me. So I love reflecting in this way. That being said, if you've like listened to my podcast, which is I'm losing it. You see what I did there? I plug it right from the beginning. It's so smart. Um but yeah, I'm gonna have to redirect the podcast off the podcast like channels. Mostly because I'm unemployed and the cost to keep it up is just getting too much for me. That being said, like why not utilize something that's like free, such as YouTube? So yeah, I'm gonna be posting um my podcast content on my YouTube channel. And I don't know how to feel about that. I know how to feel about that because like I don't know, it feels like on podcast services it feels safe, like it's a niche. I was providing like very, I guess, self-help stuff, but very like commentary. you know it's I had a very unique point of view. Oh my God, my podcast reached like 1,000 downloads. Thanks, by the way, guys. Like that's kind of slay, like that's kind of big slay. um but I, can always redirect to YouTube, but YouTube is like a wider audience, and I don't know how unfiltered I want to be. There's always that line of like, you want to be honest, but then like some of the stories that you have to tell aren't like always your like. I'm ready to talk about it, but some people aren't ready to talk about it, and I'm like, oh, touchy. And because like I just love talking through shit, you know what I mean? Yeah, so all of that culminated into a I need to make I need to make a video. I need to make a video. But like obviously I don't like making the videos for my podcast. This is something I've debated on. Oh my God, it's been the bane of my existence. I've tried putting stuff up on Instagram. It doesn't work because Mark Zuckerberg literally hates me. Took away IGTV. The maximum stuff you can post on Instagram is like a minute. And I'm just like, oh my God, why? Like, why? I just want to be a hottie. I want to be a hottie who posts my shit wherever I want to post my shit, you know? But I think being redirected to YouTube is good for me. I think it'll make me more active on this platform, and maybe it's gonna help me get over that whole shy thing, like being perceived thing. Because I mean, I ultimately have to make the content I want to make. It's my story. This is the beginning of the red. Why is that song in my head? But yeah, I was really needing this sort of like outlet of just ranting to a microphone. I think that's therapeutic in its own. But as I was thinking about like what I'm gonna like make this episode about, I felt like immense gratitude to like just how well I've been able to navigate my life the past few months. Um and just grateful for the mindsets that I had to adopt in order to actualize my mental health. And yeah, this episode is like a self-help um process gratitude thing, if that makes sense. Post-production me is gonna make that into a very, very good catchy title. I love guys, can I just say, whenever I make these, I'm in the role, mama. I am in the right now. I'm the talent. Right now I'm the talent, and the editor, he's gonna have to sort that shit out. And when I'm the editor, I'm like, I fucking hate you. Why don't you just stick to script, you bitch? And I'm like, that's a lot of energy you're giving me. Yeah, but I think my process has been very, very valid and very, very like helpful towards me. Like, I had to adopt like, that like tough parent situation. Actually, I want to thank my therapist for this. Minette, if you're out there, girl, you're an icon. You are an icon because she has dropped some like pearls of wisdom, or some iconic lines where she was like, I'm sorry, I hate when people like laugh before the story, but like honestly, she looked at me right. She's like, you can't want to be there for people more than they want to be there for themselves. And then I was like, oop, like Nicki Minaj, oop. And she's like, you have to decide now. Do you want to live or not? I said, oop. And I think that was so iconic. She said, listen, girl, I got clients. And I love her. She was such an icon. Um, but doing a lot of work in therapy and sort of being able to reflect on the stuff and, being given the tools to, really just dissect my mind. And I've been really appreciative of that process. But there were a few things that were really, really hard for me to even think conceive. I think anyone who's ever been like in a dark space, be it like massive panic attack, anxiety, like depression, just like really in their own head, really unable to control their body, really unable to control their actions, really feeling passive in their life and sort of feeling just a lot of emotions related to the trauma that they've had and how they've had to navigate life as an intersectional being, like just basically as a human. I think when things get a little dark, it becomes really, really hard to remember that you have support. And I think that's something that was a mindset I really had to shift for myself. I had to be like, listen, I don't care how what was me you think this is. Like, let's be honest. You have family, you have friends, and you have people who actually are always in your business on some what's going on. So like maybe tell them. Like, why are you being dramatic? Like, I personally had to accept that like I do have support. Like each time I was trying to be like brave or be like, no, it's okay, I don't want to talk about it. No, like it was only to my detriment. And then I thought about the times when it wasn't even that. And some people of course like don't have the close bonds because of the cards that life has dealt. But then it's important to remember that like they are so for everything that is an internal conflict for you, there are people out there who are dedicated to making it not so. And I think that's very, very important. Like mental health is an emergency. Like it's health. It's life. You know what I mean? Like there's people who constantly work at these things, and it reminded me of like, oh my god, do you guys remember when like the 2000s there would be that advert, that advert of that kid who was like alone, she had no food, she was like just destitute, there was like eerie music, there was wind, there was shadows, and then this giant owl came and gave like feathers that made numbers, and then some zebra unicorn thing came and gave like that was production. That was South Africa, was that was a production, mama, and that production was we need to stop child abuse, and that was a campaign I could get behind. And when I was going through that period of like sort of discovering all of like the help available out there, I was shocked. Like there are always people working. There's 24-hour child line, there's depression anxiety helplines, there's stop gender violence helplines 24 hours, like there's even some like love advice stuff, like there's people who are always working. There's Alcoholics Anonymous, which is I think would be a very, very like useful thing for people who are trying to be sober. Like I know a few of my friends from med school who are on their sober journey, and like I love that for them. And wouldn't it be nice to just be like, oh my god, I wanna have a tequila. Let me call somebody. Like let me call somebody. You know what I mean? Like these are platforms that always exist, but it always feels like when you're like down and out, you forget that there are people, if not your immediate circle, people you think care about you, there are people who care about this particular thing, and thus an extension care about you. And I think that's a very nice sentiment to always get behind. It's nice to remember that support wherever you are will always exist. And if you don't have the Wi-Fi to access this, there's always like a local library. There's always like Wi-Fi at a restaurant, Wi-Fi at a KFC. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you're really creative and intentional about getting help, it's nice to sort of access all the support that there is and really think about what that can do for you. And whether it's for you or whether it's not, it doesn't matter, but it's just nice to be more informed. So, yeah, I love her. You know, Alicia Cara, when she said call what suicide prevention. I love that shit. I love a campaign for mental health because I just feel like it doesn't make sense why it's not taken with more urgency. Like, mental health day should be a thing. Like, life is kind of rough. Like, let's be for real. Yeah, so that's my first takeaway. Something that I really had to learn was like support always exists in some way or form. And you just have to be intentional about receiving it and be open to what receiving it looks like. Like, if you tell someone, hey, for instance, I'm trying to be sober right now. Please don't let me drink. And when that person actively stops you from drinking, you can't be shocked. You know what I mean? Like, you must act accordingly, you know? So support's there, but how you utilize it is sort of, I think, the crux. Oh, my neighbor is locking that door. It's the crux of how we really get to it. And the second thing that I really, really had to sort of wrap my head around when I was conceptualizing, like, what if I'm always fighting these demons? Like, let's be honest, like, why is no one else able to recognize it? Like, and it's that mental health is a solo battle. Like, it really be in your own head, you know what I mean? But it also really be not. Oh my god, those are bars. Did I just do a bar thing? It really be in you, and I ruined it. Oh, you can't ever let a good thing be a good thing, Lou. Um, but it's a solo battle. It's a solo battle because you could be having the worst day of your life. You could be in the gutter. You could be kicked. Like, you could be just horrendously low. You could be worthless, just feeling very, very just right? You can be all of that. And the second someone who is exactly that walks in the same room and y'all feed into each other's negative energy, it's over. You know what I mean? But very rarely does that happen. Oftentimes, you're in a bad mood in a room full of what seems like normal feeling people. Because when you're in a bad mood and you're just depressed for a very long time, it sort of becomes hard to conceptualize that other people are having like alternating emotions as well. And you sort of see everyone else as having normal feelings. Like, everyone else seems normal and you seem othered, which is a very wild trick our brain plays because, like, no, that's literally not. Like, if this was such a niche experience, there wouldn't be so much literature, there wouldn't be so much. You're not alone. But it is a solo battle, and it's when you're always gonna fight with yourself, and it's one that you really have to be in charge of, and it's one that you're gonna have to take active participation in explaining to other people sometimes, or active decision making and deciding. If you don't want to explain yourself, you don't want to explain yourself, but know the repercussions of all of those actions. It's, I think, when you understand that it's always going to be you fighting for yourself. You know, it's always going to be on you to sort of navigate this world. And there are spaces where it's beautiful and it's everyone navigates it organically, and that's great. But for a lot of the time, you're going to have to be the person who has to explain your solo battle to the people around you. You're going to have to be your biggest advocate. You're going to have to know your patterns. You're gonna have to be the one who has to recognize when shit's going downhill because you spend the most amount of time with yourself. So it's a solo battle. You know exactly what your triggers are, and if you don't, and you keep being triggered by something, take note and then be like, "Oh my god, I think I don't like it when you call me like chunky. Maybe that's a trigger for me." You know what I mean? Like, it's a solo battle, but because of that, it's your scene to sit. No one else knows what's going on, and if it just stays in your head, it doesn't really go anywhere. So yeah, make it not a solo battle. Make it not a solo battle, because you know what every battle has? Every battle has the guy who has the water. Bring the water guy in. Just be like, hey, just take a break. I'm kind of battling here. You know what I mean? Like, let's make it make it make it fun for yourself how you go about finding help in different ways, you know. um if this week you feel like you can't actively tell people what you're going through, you can watch a YouTube video, mama. Watch a YouTube video. No talking, just listen, right? And if you want to hear a little bit of both, watch a live. There's always a lives going on certain topics. Like, you can watch people debate it. Like, you can do it. Like, you can find the content that's out there. Um, but you have to be able to describe your solo battle. You have to be able to set the scene so that other people can understand it. Because if you're just constantly being like, I'm in a bad mood, and people can't contextualize why, unfortunately, empathy doesn't really extend that far. I think humans have a long way to go in it. I think we've regressed. I think we've really, really regressed because we don't give each other the benefit of the doubt a lot. So it unfortunately falls on us to always, set the scene for our own abuse and explain ourselves. And you can participate in that or you cannot. But these are all decisions that you unfortunately have to make. But yeah, it's a solo battle, but you don't have to watch it alone. You can go fight alone, but you can, ride to the battle with some friends. You can make a Netflix documentary about the clothes you're gonna wear to the battle. Like, the fight is yours, but everything around the fight and how you go about being supported and who's in the room and all of that shit, that's on you. You have that autonomy, and that shit's fun. You get to pick your battle shit. I'm getting too lost in the metaphor. You know what I mean? I think an underutilized word in mental health is safety. I think there's a lot people can do, but as long as they don't feel safe while doing something, it doesn't really do much. If you're not safe, you're in a state of distress, then your body's fighting you, and then it's the same old. It's a tale as old as time. But what does it mean to become your own safe space? What does it mean to be able to navigate the world in a way that gives you some semblance of safety? And this applies in different ways. Like, if we're thinking physical safety, some people take up martial arts, some people they carry around tasers, some people like carry out full machetes, go off, you know what I mean? Some people carry guns, and whatever that means, that's everyone's own way of trying to find some semblance of safety. But what does it mean for you to be a safe space for yourself in terms of your mental health? It really just, to me, means not being in the rooms that are not healthy for me, you know what I mean? It means not really participating in my own suffering where I can. It means choosing the spaces that I go to well. It means choosing the people that I let into my life well. It means having a curated life, because only what I have chosen and deemed to be safe is what I can let into my stronghold. That is safety to me. You know what I mean? So finding what safety is to you is, I think, something that's very important. You can't have the things that anchor you feel unsafe and threatened, And I think in terms of how I show up to space and show up to rooms, safety for me has really been having to become the person that, like, I've always been the sort of person who stand up for myself. Like, girl, don't even get me started. And there's been specific instances where my ability to stand up for myself has been weaponized against me, where it's like, hey, we know that you are good at speaking out. Can you speak out against this? And it's been fine. But the second when I speak out about something that touches a little bit like someone else's nerve, it's like, whoa, actually we know you're going guns blazing. And I'm like, why is it okay for people to determine when I get to speak out? That's not fair. That's not fair. You know what I mean? So really taking back the power in my own voice has been my safety. And one thing you're not going to do is disrespect me. You know, I think respect is very, very important. I think it's like all we really have as people. And respect it just goes as seeing someone else as just another being going through life. Like, we don't have to add labels to it. We don't have to exchange words. We can just exchange a look. We can just exchange an experience. We can exchange a nothingness. That's okay. Like, we don't have to force interactions that aren't working out in the grand scheme of life if they're not desirable by any of the parties involved, or maybe one side of the parties. It doesn't matter. Like, what will be will be. Wait, sorry. On that, what will be. I've been having this discussion with with my friends, like, in terms of fate. Is fate real? Free will? Are we destined to be certain types of ways? And honestly, I think my current summary of what I feel about fate and destiny to date, like, this is like, of course, opinions can always change, but to date, I think that free will is a concept that exists in the present, and thus it is real in the present, right? But fate and destiny exists without timeline. You know what I mean? It exists. It's not was I fated to be here? Was I fated from yesterday to be here? Was I fated from my birth to be here? Like, fate and destiny is just it exists beyond timeline. So I think both are true, but I think that, and I know that sounds like I'm nitpicking. I know. But I'm explaining why there are different concepts, and they aren't bound to. They're mutually exclusive. However, they can draw closer to each other. You know what I mean? And I think that's when maybe I'd bring in the law of attraction. You know what I mean? So if free will in the present is, it's up to you. You make the decisions. Like, you can go slap someone right now. You can flipping, like, go steal a motorcycle. You can do whatever. You can do whatever right now. That's free will, and that's real. But what it will attract is what you were destined to be, if that makes sense. So if you're in your free will era and you maybe you do slap someone, you end up in jail. You don't like being in jail. Jail's a very bad arc for you. You get out of jail, maybe this experience maybe lasted 5 seconds, but if you are fated to maybe be a writer, that arc could be like, oh my god, I want to be a writer now. I want to write about my experience. Do you get me? Like, free will exists. Free will exists. But what free will informs is fate and destiny. And destiny is ever changing because it exists in all timelines. I'm fucking smart, bitches. Anyway, let me go back to my story after I just broke metaphysics. Tangent aside, I hope my point still stands. I think safe spaces are to be prioritized and sought after intentionally. I think, be that physical space or relationships or like finding community online, I think places where you feel safe are quite rare, and I think they're to be protected. And I think that's the human spirit sort of telling us to go towards those spaces. If you feel safe in a certain thing, I think that's to be examined, and that's to be sought after. Something else that I've learned is that who I am or who I'm becoming is not for me to control, but for me to discover. And I think when done right, when we're sort of free to discover who we are with support and and with resources and without stresses. Like, I think of university, like, a university student is supposed to be able to thrive under so much pressure, but, you know, a, a person who's fighting insecurity and a person who's, who has food for the night, they have like different stresses. And how does that stress affect their learning? How does that stress affect their day? How does that stress affect how they show up the next morning? So I think with the combination of all of these things, it'll be ideal if, when we are free to discover who we are, it's done with all of these nitty gritty things that weigh us down being gone. But that can't really happen. So I think it feeds back to them. At the very least, we need to have healthy ways of navigating uncertainties. And that's so hard to say, because when shit hits the fan, it's not like you're going to be like, what's my healthy way to navigate trauma? Well, how do I normally do this? You know what I mean? But that's sort of how, unfortunately, I don't know about y'all, but that's how I've had to do it. I've had to be like, okay, listen, you know what you could do. You could make a mess of this, you know what I mean? You could vent, you could status run, you could run a Twitter, make a thread, you could cry, you know what I mean? You could call friends, you could stay up all night, you could write a poem about this shit, you know, you're deeply hurt, what are you gonna do about it? There's all of these could haves and things, reactions one could have, but, how are you contributing towards longer sustainable healthy habits? I guess I don't know. I feel like when I say this shit, it's I think it's it's the sort of stuff you need to hear when you want to hear it, because I know if I talked to myself when I have been just like in the thick of it, you know what I mean, when I just didn't feel any drive, any ambition, any reason for living, when I was just like a ball of nihilism, it's not like this conversation would have helped. But I think what would have helped is if I'd had this conversation with myself when I was still in the healthier portions, when you can still listen to reason. So I think at the very least, I want this podcast to serve as a checking in on yourself too. You know what I mean? Because oh my god, I miss Nikki. I know that's random, but y'all know Nikki. And I think the last thing that I really just had to personally learn is not to take not to take anything too seriously. Like, it's never that deep. Like, it really, really is never that deep. Honestly, the way to which I need to remember to never take things that seriously is crazy, because my anxiety was, I'm the sort of person who would like Google Map something, like download the route, screenshot it, also send it to myself just in case the cloud doesn't, back up from my phone, because somehow that is a weird thing. You know what I mean? I'm gonna overthink and I'm gonna over prepare, and I'm just like, it's never that deep. The general direction, go in the general direction. If you get lost, you can ask some locals. It's never that deep. But I think there's something I'm still learning in all aspects. Like, sometimes when I start a painting and I just want to paint, like, I just want to paint. I just want to paint something. I'm not trying to overthink it. I'm just trying to put a brush stroke to a canvas, and I'm just trying to make a little pretty drawing. And I sit there for hours and I just contemplate what I'm gonna do, what color palette I'm gonna use, and what it means. And I'm just like, it's never that deep. And oftentimes in my life, when I've realized that all I have is the choices that I have right now, and right now I want to do this. When you really narrow it down to living life by the moment, with the future in mind, of course, but when you're living right now, it's never that deep. Whether you buy whether you buy those KFC wings right now or tomorrow, it's never that deep. You are gonna buy them. Like, there's certain things that we know to be inevitable because of who we are, and there's things we're always gonna try to control. But yeah, it's never that deep. It's never that deep. I started off by saying I'm really appreciative of the era that I'm in. I really am. I'm in my rebuilding era, you know. I'm in my doing software to add to my CV so I can, have something era, you know. I'm in charge of the looks era. I'm in my, oh my god, let's go a little harder on the editing there, babes era, and really pushing myself to have fun with the content that I make. So oh my god, I was about to say I'm loving it. What the Yeah, I mean, I think mental health has been a journey. I think it's always going to be a journey. I think we're going to have good days, we're going to have bad days, and we're going to have good years, we're going to have bad years, but that's life. And that's okay. And all I can really, really do is try to live authentically in the moment. That's the crux of it, guys. That's the crux of it. You know what I mean? You just gotta do what feels authentic to you, because then you won't have regrets. And if you don't have regrets, oh my, what accent is that? Yeah, thank you for listening. Love, love, love making this podcast. It's been so long. I know. I'm sorry about it. If you don't know me and you somehow stumbled upon this, I don't know how you'd get here, honestly. I'd have to believe I'm some marketing genius that has gathered this like specific content for you. You know what I mean? We'd, if you don't know me and this is the first time you're interacting with my content, I would have to believe that I have indeed entered some sort of nexus level being where I put my thoughts out there and I just like, yeah, or mastering SEO. I don't know, whichever one comes first. Bye. Thank you for listening. Woo.